we've had Operation Popeye, otherwise referred to as Project Popeye, which of course everyone in the geoengineering space at this point knows about, which is the use of cloud seeding, silver iodide cloud seeding, over the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam to make mud not war, which is of course a play on the whole make love not war of the 1960s anti-war movement.
Inside the squadron, the rainmaking operations were codenamed Motopool. The aims of the operation were to soften road surfaces, making them difficult to traverse, trigger landslides along key roadways, wash out river crossings to hinder movement, and to keep the soil saturated for extended periods, prolonging the logistical nightmare. Through these tactics, Operation Popeye sought to turn the very environment into an obstacle for enemy supply trucks and disrupt the flow of resources along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. A storm of ethical quandaries and unforeseen consequences brewed beneath Operation Popeye's weather manipulation. In 1971, a Washington Post article by reporter Jack Anderson exposed that the US was covertly engaging in weather weaponization in Vietnam. This revelation was backed by the Pentagon Papers leak from Daniel Ellsberg. The following year, New York Times journalist Seymour Hersh reported on Operation Popeye with the headline, "Rainmaking is used as a weapon by the US." Just days after this story was published, the entire program was officially terminated, and all cloud seeding missions were halted. Democratic Senator Claiborne Pell, disturbed by the news, demanded the declassification and public release of the Operation Popeye specifications. The program's annual cost was approximately $3.6 million, covering the operation and maintenance of modified aircraft, the purchase of seeding materials and salaries for the personnel involved. The public, particularly environmental activists, were outraged to discover that the US had been secretly manipulating the weather in Vietnam.
So at this point, the public conversation has emerged. There's people talking about this. People are upset about it. An article written in the New York Times, and there's outrage, right? People are very upset about this. And this is kind of leads into the Environmental Modifications Treaty of the UN.
Operation Popeye was officially ended on July 5, 1972. In 1977, the US became a signatory to the Environmental Modification Convention Treaty, an international accord that prohibited the use of weather modification for malicious purposes.
So we have this treaty signed, which basically says, hey, we're not going to be using environmental modification for warfare. It's only going to be legal for peaceful purposes without ever defining what peaceful purposes actually means. And at this point, I think it would be best if I hand some of this over to Rob, because he has a very good understanding of the physics aspect of it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. And great question, Mary. Yeah. So pumping is the biochemistry of geoengineering. Beginning in the 40s, it carries all the way up to the present. This is an important point to make. All three of these phases layer up
on
top of each other. Yeah. So yeah, I know that the CHD audience is familiar with Augustus Dorico and Rainmaker.
A little bit.
And they're involved in sort of current cloud seeding biochemical experiments around the country. Then we have the jumping phase, as Paul mentioned, the biophysics. And physics is about the study of light. And this is when in the 1950s and 60s, after the atom is cracked open with the Manhattan Project, physicists look up at the sky and they start imagining that we might be able to actually regulate the sun's radiation, the amount of sunlight hitting the earth in response to concerns about rising CO2 levels, runaway technology, earth warming or cooling, etc. So that's when they begin to start talking about the jumping, regulating the sunlight and heat through the use of electromagnetic frequency technologies like HARP, as Paul mentioned, and stratospheric aerosol injections to engage in SRM, solar radiation management. We're literally going to take charge of the sun, Mary.
Hard
And
to
this idea,
fathom the hubris of all of this, right? I mean, just
it's amazing. Yeah.
it's
And
really
this idea is,
breathtaking. It is breathtaking to think
it,
that,
it,
whatever,
yeah.
60 years ago, we have sort of, crazy scientists who think, oh yeah, we can just take over the sun's job. We can do it
Right.
better.
Yeah, and there's a direct line between the invention of the atomic bomb by
Yeah,
physicists and almost right away, these same A-bomb physicists'
yeah,
interest
yeah.
in controlling the sun. Johnny von Neumann, who's probably the most prominent and brilliant
Hmm.
mathematician and physicist, other than maybe Robert Oppenheimer, who everyone's
Hmm.
familiar with, and
Yeah,
Edward Teller, the
yeah,
father of the H-bomb. Johnny von Neumann in 1955 writes a very famous piece in Fortune, the aptly named Fortune magazine,
yeah.
in which he speculates about, we're going to see rising carbon dioxide levels on the Earth. So be afraid, we must begin to think about using physics, biophysics, quantum physics, like we did with the atom, to really start controlling the thermostat of the
Hmm.
Earth, as he
Hmm.
says.
Hmm. So, and I think in this physics phase, Rob, we talk about ionospheric heaters. That is a term that I certainly find pretty hard to get my head around. Could you explain that to us in this kind of biophysical phase?
Sure, yeah. Ionospheric heating involves both the biochemistry and the biophysics of geoengineering. Biochemically, geoengineers emplace nanoparticulate metals in the upper atmosphere, the high troposphere, which is that first section of the atmosphere going up from the Earth. And then above the troposphere is the stratosphere, stratospheric aerosol injections, and place nanoparticulate metals, yes, biochemistry, and then direct electromagnetic frequency technology, laser beams, essentially. I'm simplifying a little bit, but
Hmm.
at those nanoparticulate metals and placed in the atmosphere to try and steer weather around, to try and manipulate the weather
Hmm.
and thus the climate. So that's really what ionospheric heaters are all about. And we have to remember too, Mary, there's this beautiful relationship between the sun and our Earth. And the two of those beautiful celestial bodies in conversation create electromagnetic energy
Hmm.
fields
Right.
moving up from the core of the Earth all the
Hmm.
way up towards the outer atmosphere. So
Hmm.
quantum physicists, mathematicians, geoengineers become very interested in those electromagnetic energy fields, those natural electromagnetic energy
Right.
fields, and trying to manipulate, massage, tweak, change, regulate those magnetic energy fields after the A bomb.